let's talk about the barbell deadlift. Before I even get started, if I don't answer your question with this exercise, check out your advanced movement patterns where we go in depth about troubleshooting this exercise, if things like your hips are shooting up, what to do next. So we're not going to go over that today. I'm just going to break down the deadlift and how to perform that. But check out that advanced movement guide, because this exercise, although it looks simple, is actually very technical and it is challenging. So let's kind of talk about what has to happen with this exercise. And it starts with approaching the bar. We want to start with the bar over. A good place to think about, if you're barefoot when you're doing this exercise, just think about where you would tie your shoes. That's a great place to start. And you might ask, where should I put my feet? Should I go wide? Should I go narrow? And you really want to start in an explosive place, because you really want to be as explosive as possible. We don't have the eccentric portion, and we want to really be explosive out of the hole. So a good place to figure out where your feet should be would be just take a step forward and pretend like you're going to jump. And where you would jump from is typically where you're going to be the most explosive from. So we're going to use that stance for our deadlift. So for me, it's a little bit more narrow than shoulder width. If you have wider hips, you might take a wider stance. So that will be determined based on your body. There's not an exact position. So you can try that jump technique, see where your feet are, and that's typically a good place to start. You can modify that and see where you feel strong. Now, hand position, we're going to go a double overhand position. If you do an alternate grip, at that point you would do dominant side reverse, but if you need to do that, let's just wrap in. And the reason for that is I want to make sure that our upper back is bracing as evenly as possible, so we minimize risk of injury as much as possible. Our goal is not to be powerlifters and grip that weight and lift it in a meet. Our goal is to get strong in that back. So I do want you to take a double overhand grip, and your hands are basically going to be slightly outside your legs. So if you're taking a wider stance, you're usually going to have to take a little bit wider grip, but you're not going to usually take a real wide stance unless you have really wide hips, and then you probably also have longer arms, and that grip will be natural. So I do approach the bar, as I said. The bar is right over my shoelaces. I don't want to start with the bar too far away or too close together. If that happens, you usually get what's called bar drift, where the bar comes and pulls away from you when you start the lift. We'll get into all that for the advanced movement pattern guide, so check that out if you have questions. Now I start in position. I want to grip that bar right outside my legs. I don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time in that down position. If I do that, I'm losing that explosiveness. So even though we don't have a stretch reflex, the longer we're in this position, the less explosive we're going to be. So I do want to try to set up correctly prior to dropping down and exploding up. Now, some people that you might see online, or people that are experts in this lift, will drop down and pick up the weight and explode up almost instantaneous. These are individuals who have spent hundreds of hours deadlifting and have that programmed perfectly. You will probably not go at this speed, because really what you want to do is focus on being as tight as you possibly can and making sure that you create that intra-abdominal tension to allow your body to brace. And if you go too quickly, you're going to lose that. So although you might see some experts and professionals do it this way, you don't want to spend as much time as possible. It is probably not going to be a split second. You might spend a couple seconds down there. So I'm going to get in position. I'm tight on the bar. I'm pinching the pits. I'm maintaining neutral spine. Now from here, we're going to take deep breath. Now I'm not going to get in depth about how to brace, but watch the advanced video on the movement patterns to get into that. So I'm going to take my deep breath, create the tightness, I fall back. When I fall back, I'm basically waiting until my shoulders are in line with the bar. From there, my initial movement is to drive my feet into the bar as hard as I can. Now before I do this, I want to get as absolutely tight as possible. I cannot stress this enough. This is probably the biggest mistake people make, is they do not take all the tightness out of their body before they initiate the lift. And that can cause a lot of problems. It can increase your risk of injury. So we do want to tighten up as hard as possible. So I'm about 190 pounds. We have 205 pounds on the bar. I'm going to put about 200 pounds of pressure on that bar, pulling upward to get as tight as I can before I even initiate that lift. And the reason for that is because when I push my feet into the floor, the bar moves, my body does not, which is going to keep us in the correct position. If we don't get tight, our body's going to get out of position and we're going to lose all our levers. So we're going to get tight. Take our breath. And during this time, I'm also slightly corkscrewing the floor, engaging my hips into that position. So I am very much like a squat. Now my feet are probably more narrow than a squat, but I am trying to really engage everything through my hips. My back is tight. I'm breathing into my low back and obliques, trying to create as much pressure and stability in my body as possible. And then I initiate the lift. Now when I initiate that lift, I'm driving my feet through the floor, maintaining that tightness. When I start to reach the knees, and I wouldn't even think about reaching the knees as almost initiating it as soon as you feel the bar break the floor. And the reason for that is because if you start to push your hips forward once the bar reaches your knees, a lot of times that starts initiating when you're hitting your thighs. So once I break the floor, I start pushing my hips forward and I'm trying to pull my shoulders behind the bar. Well, that's not possible, but it's a good teaching cue to think, I need to pull back, not up. When you pull back, the bar will travel in a straight line, which is our goal. We don't want the bar moving in an arc. We want one straight line. And if we pull back and push forward with our hips, that bar will travel in a straight line. So I'll once again walk you through this. I've got my grip. I get tight on the bar. I'm pulling this up. So I'm creating tension, falling back, initiating. I drive my feet through the floor. So I'm thinking about almost leg pressing the floor away from me. As I leg press the floor, I start driving through my hips and pulling through my back. So it's almost like I'm hip thrusting at this position and continually pulling my shoulders back. And then I can use my hips and back to create levers to drive that bar. When you do the deadlift correctly, it almost feels easy. When you do it incorrectly, you're gonna feel it a lot in your low back, and it feels like you're traveling a long distance. If you don't know how to do this, check out that advanced training video. It's a phenomenal exercise and something that you're gonna do pretty much from the beginning to the end. One of the best exercises to strengthen that posterior chain.